The world rarely gives us silence. More often it gives us noise, sharp, loud, relentless, disruptions, deadlines, arguments, uncertainty, and in that noise most people react. They panic, they match the chaos, they lose themselves. But there's another way, a quieter, stronger way, a way that doesn't need to shout or resist, but instead observes, anchors, breathes. That way is calm, and calm is not weakness, it's not passivity. Calm is control, calm is power, because when the world shakes, and you don't, you've already won. The Stoics weren't trying to avoid the storm, they were training to stand in it. Not with arrogance, but with preparation. Not with force, but with clarity. They knew that chaos doesn't destroy people. It reveals them. It reveals who's anchored and who's adrift. This episode isn't about escaping difficulty. It's about mastering presence, about learning how to keep your center when everything around you is losing theirs. Because peace isn't found in the absence of noise. It's found in the choice not to become it. So let's begin. Let's talk about what it truly means to stay calm in chaos, and why that choice might just be your greatest form of strength. 1. Chaos tests your true strength. It's easy to appear strong when life is quiet, when everything is under control and the people around you agree, and your plans are unfolding just the way you hoped. In that kind of order, anyone can feel composed. Anyone can say the right things, wear the right mask, pretend to be grounded. But real strength doesn't show up in calm conditions. It's revealed in the storm. Chaos exposes the parts of us we thought we had mastered and demands we prove it. When the unexpected hits, a betrayal, a failure, a loss, a confrontation, the reflex for most people is emotional. They panic, they lash out, they shut down. But the Stoic doesn't react. He responds. Not because he's numb, but because he's trained, because he knows that chaos is not the enemy. Emotional disarray is. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice what he's saying. Strength isn't about bending the world to your will. It's about not allowing the world to bend you out of your own. When chaos erupts, your first test is internal. Can you stay still? Can you resist the urge to match the energy around you? Can you hold your center when the ground shakes? This is the battlefield, not out there, in here. In the thoughts you allow, the stories you tell yourself, the tension you hold or release. And like any strength, this one must be trained. You don't build it by reading quotes or reciting affirmations. You build it by noticing the moment you want to explode and choosing stillness instead. By noticing the rising tension in your chest and breathing instead of reacting. By sitting with discomfort without needing to fix, control, or escape it. That's when your strength becomes real, when it's not just a theory, but a practice. Because anyone can be calm when it's convenient, but to stay grounded when nothing makes sense, that's rare, and that's what separates those who crumble from those who rise. Look back on your life. Your most defining moments weren't the ones where everything went right. They were the moments where everything fell apart, and you didn't. Where the world got loud, but you stayed clear. Where people doubted you, and you didn't self-destruct. Where you had every reason to break, but you chose to bend instead, and return stronger. That's the test. And it keeps coming. Life doesn't promise order, but it does offer opportunity. The opportunity to show yourself who you really are. Not just who you say you are when things are good, but who you become when they're not. And if you want to know your true strength, don't look at your wins. Look at your storms. Look at the last time everything collapsed and you kept going. Chaos will visit. It always does. You don't need to fear it. You need to prepare for it. You need to welcome it as the training ground it is. Because every moment of disorder is a chance to rise above reflex and choose mastery. Not of the world, but of yourself. And once you've passed that test, once you've remained calm when you could have lost yourself, you don't just become stronger, you become unshakable. 2. Calm is contagious and disarming. There's a strange power in being the calmest person in the room. When tension rises and voices get louder, the one who doesn't react, the one who stays still, composed, deliberate, suddenly becomes the one others look to. Not because they have the loudest voice, but because they've become the anchor, the emotional center of gravity. In chaos, calmness commands respect, not by force, but by presence. This isn't something mystical, it's neurological. Human beings mirror each other. When someone panics, it triggers a chain reaction. We tense up, we brace ourselves. But the reverse is also true. Calm creates calm. Regulated nervous systems can influence dysregulated ones. That's why when someone remains grounded during a crisis, others instinctively move closer. Because it feels safe, because it feels steady, because it reminds them of a possibility they had forgotten, that it's okay to slow down, even here. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience confirmed it. They practiced the art of restraint, not because they were detached, but because they knew the power of internal order. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And often, the greatest reaction is no reaction, just a pause, a breath, a moment of stillness that speaks louder than 1,000 arguments. Imagine you're in a heated conversation. The other person is escalating, using sharp words, emotional tones. The expected response is to match them, to raise your voice, defend your pride, prove your point. But what happens when you don't? What happens when you stay composed, listen fully, speak clearly, and refuse to be pulled into the emotional current? You disarm them, not by overpowering, but by doing the opposite. You hold space. You create room for reflection. And in that space, something powerful happens. The conflict begins to lose momentum. The energy shifts. They feel the contrast. They see in your restraint something they didn't expect. And in many cases, they soften, they listen, they adjust. Not because you forced them to, but because your calm became louder than their chaos. This doesn't mean you suppress emotion. It means you master its expression. You choose when, how, and whether to act on it. And in a world that rewards reactivity, this kind of mastery is rare. It sets you apart. It builds trust. And more than that, it gives you influence. Not over others necessarily, but over the environment you move through. Think of the people you admire, the leaders, mentors, friends who made an impact on you. Were they reactive or were they present? Were they frantic or focused? Most likely, they were the ones who brought clarity when others brought confusion. The ones who paused when others panicked. That's not a personality trait. That's a trained response. And you can build it too. Start small. When something annoys you, pause. When someone cuts you off, pause. When things don't go as planned, pause. Not forever. Just long enough to check in, to decide how you want to show up. Because your calm isn't just for you. It's a gift to those around you. It becomes a standard, a mirror, a quiet revolution in a world addicted to noise. And here's the truth. You don't have to fix every situation. You don't have to convince or convert or control. Sometimes the greatest thing you can do is stay calm enough to remind others of their own capacity for calm. And that's real strength. 3. Stillness in the storm is mastery. We're taught to act, to solve, to rush toward resolution. We think that every problem demands a movement, every conflict a reaction, every doubt an answer. But mastery isn't about reacting faster. It's about resisting the pressure to react at all. Stillness is not inaction. It's intentional non-reaction. It's choosing clarity over chaos. And in a storm, that's what makes you dangerous. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're composed. Storms come in many forms: emotional conflict, sudden loss, financial pressure, relationship breakdown, a moment of public humiliation, or that quiet, personal chaos, the kind that lives inside your own thoughts when everything seems uncertain. And in those moments, the world tells you, do something, say something, fight back, defend yourself. But what if the wisest thing isn't to move, but to pause? Not to suppress your emotion, but to watch it. Not to fight the storm, but to observe it without letting it consume you. The Stoics knew the difference between power and control. Control is external. You're trying to change the world, the outcome, the people. But power? That's internal. It's the ability to remain whole when everything around you fragments. As Seneca said, "He is most powerful who has power over himself." And in the eye of the storm, that's what stillness gives you, power over yourself. It's easy to misinterpret this stillness. People may call it apathy, indifference, weakness, but they don't see the discipline it takes to remain calm in chaos. They don't see the battle happening inside you, the racing thoughts, the emotional waves, the deep instinct to escape or retaliate. And they definitely don't see the victory of choosing not to feed the storm. That victory, it's silent, but it's sacred. True stillness isn't passive, it's alert, aware, rooted. It listens before it speaks. It breathes before it reacts. It steps back, not to avoid the situation, but to understand it. Stillness allows you to see the whole picture. It keeps you from saying what you'll regret, from acting in ways that betray your values, from becoming part of the very chaos you're trying to rise above. And here's the secret most people miss. Stillness is not something you find. It's something you build, like muscle, like focus. You train it. Every time you choose not to respond to a provocation, you build it. Every time you sit with discomfort instead of fleeing from it, you build it. Every time you quiet your mind in a moment of panic, you build it. Until one day, the storm hits again, and something in you just doesn't move. You don't need to collapse. You don't need to explain. You don't need to fight. You just are. Present, whole, calm. That's mastery. And it can't be faked. It can't be borrowed. It has to be earned through repetition, through reflection, through choosing stillness over and over again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So when life gets loud again, and it will, ask yourself, is movement necessary? Or is this a moment that calls for stillness? Because sometimes silence is the clearest statement, and stillness the loudest power. 4. Don't mirror the energy around you. It's easy to become what surrounds you, to reflect the chaos in someone else's tone, to absorb the stress in the room, to take in the sarcasm, the panic, the negativity, and send it right back. That's the default for most people. It's a survival instinct, but survival isn't mastery. And echoing dysfunction doesn't make you powerful. It makes you reactive. The Stoic path demands something harder, to remain yourself even when the world around you forgets who you are. When someone's angry, don't become anger. When they're anxious, don't become fear. When the world is rushing, don't become haste. This doesn't mean you disconnect from people. It means you don't surrender your identity to their emotional storms. You become the thermostat, not the thermometer. You influence the environment without being dominated by it. Imagine walking into a room where the energy is tense, eyes darting, breathing shallow, a sense of urgency humming under every word. Most people will unconsciously match it. Their shoulders tighten, their tone sharpens, their thoughts race. But not you, not if you've trained your presence. Because you don't enter rooms to reflect tension. You enter to transmute it, to bring steadiness, not noise. This is a kind of leadership that doesn't announce itself. It's felt, it's respected, and it's rare. Why? Because it requires deep inner work. Most people are emotional sponges. They carry the residue of every conversation, every glare, every stressful moment. But the Stoic trains not to absorb, but to remain, to be aware of others' energy without becoming it. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, but the soul is also stained by the energies it imitates. And if you're not careful, your peace becomes a product of your environment instead of a principle you carry with you." So ask yourself, who are you becoming when you're surrounded by noise? What version of you shows up when someone challenges your patience? Do you rise or do you mirror? The answer lies in your awareness, in your willingness to pause before reflecting, in recognizing that energy is a choice, not an echo. When someone yells, you can speak softer. When they rush, you can slow down. When they throw blame, you can offer clarity. That's not weakness, it's command. That's not submission, it's sovereignty. This doesn't mean you tolerate everything. It means you choose your posture deliberately. You set your internal tone so clearly that others have no choice but to adjust. And sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll keep trying to provoke a version of you that no longer exists. That's okay. Let them. The goal isn't to fix them, it's to stay you. Over time, this kind of presence changes things, not because you impose it, but because you embody it. And embodiment is magnetic. It draws out the best in people. It makes them pause, reflect, maybe even reset. And even if it doesn't, you win. Because you didn't trade your peace for participation in someone else's drama. So next time you feel that pull, that unconscious urge to match the room, remember this: you don't have to. You are not a mirror, you are the flame. And your job is not to reflect chaos, but to remain lit in the face of it. 5. Choose to de-escalate internally. Most people think that calm is something that happens to them, that it shows up when life gets easier, that peace comes when the problems go away. But that's not calm, that's convenience. Real calm isn't passive. It's an act of defiance, a conscious decision to slow down your inner world, even when the outer world speeds up. You don't wait for silence to feel centered. You create it inside you. And it always starts with a choice, a moment, a breath. Something triggers you, a comment, a failure, a delay, a betrayal, and your heart rate spikes. Your thoughts accelerate. You feel the storm rise. And here lies the critical gap, the space between stimulus and response. In that space is your power, and what you do with it defines your character. Do you escalate, following the path of least resistance into blame, defensiveness, or anger? Or do you pause, not to suppress your emotion, but to soften your grip on it? That's where de-escalation begins. Not outside, but within. It's an internal downshift, a decision to step back inside yourself and say, I won't add to this fire. I won't pour gasoline on my own mind. The Stoics were masters of this discipline. They believed that external events hold no inherent meaning. It is our interpretation that gives them power. So when someone insults you, the question isn't, how do I respond? It's, what meaning do I assign to this? That shift alone changes everything, because when you decide to interpret with calm, you protect your inner landscape. And once your inner world is in order, the outer chaos has less leverage. But here's the hard truth. De-escalation doesn't feel good at first. Your ego wants justice. Your pride wants to respond. Your mind wants resolution. Choosing calm feels like surrender, like letting someone get away with it, like weakness. But it's not. It's strength under control. It's emotional sobriety. It's proving that your peace is not for sale, not even to your own frustration. And the more you practice this, the stronger it gets. You begin to catch your reactions sooner. You notice the tension building, and instead of fueling it, you breathe through it. You shift from narrative to neutrality, from judgment to observation, from reactivity to reflection, and eventually you reach a place where not every offense needs a defense. Not every wound needs a weapon. This isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming wise. Wise enough to know that escalation rarely leads to clarity, that in the long run, emotional firestorms only burn the one who holds the match, and that the real revolution isn't in controlling others, it's in mastering your own state. So next time you feel your mind racing, your jaw tightening, your shoulders rising, ask yourself, is this helping me or is this hijacking me? Then choose differently, de-escalate, quiet the noise, return to breath, return to self. And in that stillness you'll find something rare: control without control, power without force, peace, the kind no one can take from you. 6. Anchor into breath and clarity. When chaos strikes, the mind starts running. Scenarios multiply, doubts echo, emotions rush in like a flood. And in that wave, most people drown. But you've been training for this. Because the Stoic doesn't try to stop the storm, he becomes the anchor that holds steady beneath it. And that anchor begins with breath. It's easy to dismiss breathing as something automatic, something beneath attention. But when you're in survival mode, when your thoughts are spiraling and your pulse is racing, your breath is the one tool you always have, and often the one you forget to use. The Stoics didn't speak of it in clinical terms, but they lived it. What is self-control, if not the ability to pause, inhale, and come back to reason before you act? One deep breath, truly felt, can interrupt a cascade of destructive thinking. It signals the body that you are not under immediate threat. It slows the heart, sharpens perception, and opens a small doorway to clarity. And in that clarity, you remember, not everything you feel is true. Not every thought deserves your belief. Not every impulse should become action. Breath is the beginning, but clarity is the direction. Clarity means stepping outside the story your emotions want to write and looking at what's actually happening, not what you fear, not what you assume, but what is. The mind, when left unchecked, will jump to the worst-case scenario. It fills the unknown with fire. But clarity walks slowly. It asks questions. It grounds itself in facts, not feelings. And when you combine breath with clarity, something powerful happens. You shift from reaction to reflection. You start to choose your next move with intention, not panic. You reclaim your agency. You remember that while you don't control events, you always control your stance toward them. You can meet life on your terms, not its terms. Let's be honest, most of the damage we cause in haste, in the seconds when we lose control, say things we can't unsay, make choices we regret, and those seconds, they're avoidable, not by force, but by breath, by anchoring, by stepping back, even just mentally, and asking, what matters here? What is mine to carry? What's just noise? This is why the Stoics valued presence, not because it's poetic, but because it's practical. Breath and clarity are tools, not luxuries. In meetings, in conflict, in grief, in disappointment, when your plans collapse, when someone betrays you, when the pressure spikes. These are not moments to sprint forward blindly. These are moments to return, to anchor, to breathe, to see. You're not weak for pausing. You're wise, because while others are swept away by emotion, you are steady. While others react, you assess. You don't need to control the world. You just need to control where your awareness rests. And if you can bring it back again and again to your breath, your values, your clarity, then no storm can unseat you. So next time life tries to rush you, pause, feel your breath, ask what's real, and root yourself in that quiet truth. That's your anchor, and in chaos, that's everything. 7. Prepare mentally, not emotionally. Most people walk into life armed with feelings, not with thoughts. They let emotions set the tone, color their reactions, and determine their readiness. But here's the problem. Emotions are weather. They change fast. And if your preparation depends on your mood, you'll never be consistent. One day, you feel strong. The next, you collapse. One challenge inspires you. Another breaks you. That's not strength. That's volatility. The Stoic doesn't prepare by hoping to feel ready. He prepares by becoming ready. Mentally, deliberately, ahead of time. He rehearses adversity, questions his assumptions, studies his reactions, and walks into the world having already decided who he will be when the test comes. He doesn't brace for chaos. He trains for it. And that training is internal. Think of it like this. Emotional readiness is like packing a bag after the storm begins. You're rushed, flustered, desperate. But mental preparation, that's having the kit ready before the clouds form. It's steady, it's sober, and it's designed for what matters most, staying in control when the world stops making sense. But here's the paradox. Preparing mentally often feels colder, less passionate, less alive. Why? Because it's not about adrenaline. It's about awareness. It's not about hype. It's about clarity. The Stoic doesn't need to be fired up to act. He acts because it's time, because he's already made the internal commitment long before the pressure arrived. That's why Marcus Aurelius would begin his days with premeditatio malorum, the practice of imagining what could go wrong, not to worry himself, but to armor his mind, to replace shock with steadiness, to say, if this happens, I won't be surprised. I've seen it already. In my mind, I've met it in thought, so now I'll meet it in strength. Contrast that with emotional preparation, which is driven by hope and fear. You hope things go well, you fear they won't. You ride the waves of expectation, and when life throws a curveball, you spiral. The Stoic avoids this trap. He removes hope as a strategy and replaces it with mental rehearsal. He grounds himself in reality, not fantasy. And when you do that, something changes in how you carry yourself. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop panicking. You start pivoting. You stop needing everything to go right and start preparing for what will go wrong. Not cynically, but courageously. Because mental preparation doesn't weaken joy. It strengthens resolve. It doesn't kill spontaneity. It builds resilience. Ask yourself this. When pressure rises, who do you become? The emotional version of you might lash out, shut down, or retreat. But the mentally prepared version of you, he breathes, he adapts, he remembers what matters, and he acts, not perfectly, but deliberately. That's not just Stoicism, that's power. So stop relying on feeling ready. That's fragile. Instead, train your mind, build habits, visualize setbacks, know your principles before they're tested, because when the moment arrives, and it will, you won't need a pep talk. You'll be ready, not because you feel good, but because you've done the work. 8. Detach to stay centered. In chaos, the mind clings. It grabs onto assumptions, fears, expectations, control, anything that feels like certainty. But in doing so, it forgets the one thing that actually brings peace: detachment. To the untrained mind, detachment sounds like apathy, like coldness, like checking out. But to the Stoic, detachment is the highest form of engagement, because it means you're fully present, but not enslaved. You care, but you're not controlled. You feel, but you're not ruled. Detachment doesn't mean you stop loving, working, trying, or building. It means you no longer tie your identity to the outcomes. You stop bleeding energy into what's outside your command. You pull back not to isolate, but to recenter, to return to what's yours, your thoughts, your actions, your principles. That's where control begins, and that's where chaos loses its grip. When a person is deeply attached to results, to people's opinions, to how things should go, they live in constant internal turbulence. Every shift in someone's mood becomes a crisis. Every delay feels like failure. Every setback feels like a personal insult. But the Stoic understands. None of these things are personal. The world isn't attacking you, it's just being the world. And your job is not to control it, but to master your response to it. That response begins with detachment. When you feel yourself getting swept away, pause. Ask, what here is actually mine? Is it the traffic, the algorithm, the email, the silence, the insult? Or is it how you interpret, how you hold it, how you respond to it? In that question, you reclaim your power, because most of what you suffer is what you cling to. Detachment gives you clarity. It allows you to observe the storm without becoming the storm. It keeps you grounded when everything around you is spinning. And more than anything, it protects your energy. Because when you're attached, you react impulsively. You overthink. You argue. You push. But when you're detached, you move from a deeper place, not of impulse, but of alignment. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Detachment is the application of that wisdom. It's looking at life and saying, I'm not here to bend the world to my will. I'm here to do my part with integrity and let the rest unfold. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you unshakable. Now, detachment isn't easy, especially when your emotions are involved. But it is possible. It starts with space, a single breath, a choice not to react immediately, a decision to sit with discomfort without trying to fix it or escape it. Over time, this practice rewires you. You stop living in a constant tug-of-war with reality. You stop needing everything to go your way. And strangely, life begins to feel lighter, not because it's easier, but because you're no longer dragging it behind you. So detach, not to withdraw, but to anchor, not to give up, but to rise above. Let the noise move through you without sticking. Let the outcome be what it is. Let go of the illusion of control and watch how much power returns to you. That's how you stay centered, not by holding tighter, but by loosening your grip. 9. Calm minds create clear solutions. In the middle of a crisis, most people chase answers with frantic minds. They confuse speed with progress. They mistake motion for clarity. But the Stoic knows something different. Solutions don't emerge from panic. They rise from stillness. The clearer your mind, the sharper your perception. And the sharper your perception, the simpler the truth becomes. Chaos loves noise. It thrives on urgency and fear. It whispers, "Act now, or else." And when we fall into that trap, we start making decisions from emotion, not logic. We defend ourselves before we understand the situation. We speak before we listen. We react before we pause. But clear thinking cannot happen in a storm of reactivity. It needs space. It needs air. It needs a calm mind, like a lake reflecting the sky. Think about the last time you solved something difficult, really solved it. Was it in the heat of emotion or in the calm after the storm? Chances are the breakthrough came when you stepped back, breathed, and saw things from a wider angle. Because clarity rarely shouts, it waits. It doesn't fight for your attention like fear does. You have to invite it in. That's why calm is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's not something you get to when everything else is done. It's the foundation from which wise action is built. The Stoics practiced calm not to look composed, but to stay capable, to stay effective, to make decisions rooted in what is right, not what is rushed. Calmness allows you to see the problem as it really is, stripped of exaggeration, of personal narrative, of imagined threats. And once you see it clearly, the next step becomes obvious. Maybe it's hard, maybe it's uncomfortable, but at least it's clear. There's no longer 1,000 competing stories, just the facts and your response to them. Seneca once wrote, "A good character, when established, is not easily moved. A mind in harmony is a fortress. That harmony doesn't come from avoiding problems. It comes from learning to hold them without being consumed." Calm is the internal architecture that allows you to carry weight without collapsing. And here's the hidden truth. Calm is contagious. When you stay composed in the middle of confusion, you become a lighthouse for others. Your presence becomes part of the solution, not because you said the perfect thing, but because you weren't swept away. While others panic, you breathe. While others flail, you focus. That alone can shift the energy of a room, a team, even a relationship. But calm isn't something that just appears when you need it. It's trained. It's built daily, through your habits, your thoughts, your rituals, through how you start your morning, how you speak to yourself, how you respond to the small annoyances. The calmer you stay in the minor things, the stronger your mind becomes in the major ones. So when life presents a mess, remember, you don't need to solve everything immediately. You need to calm your mind first. That's not avoidance. That's precision. That's maturity. Because it's only from that calm inner place that real answers begin to form. And in that space, quiet, steady, intentional, you become the kind of person who doesn't just react to life, but shapes it. 10. Peace is a decision in the midst of disorder. We often think peace is a product of perfect conditions, when there's no noise, no stress, no conflict. We imagine it as the absence of problems, a reward waiting on the other side of chaos. But that belief keeps peace forever out of reach, because the world rarely aligns with our expectations. And if you're waiting for everything to be calm before you feel calm, you've already surrendered your power. The Stoic doesn't wait for peace. He chooses it, in the middle of the storm, not after. Peace is not the silence outside, it's the silence within. It's not something you find, It's something you practice, a mental posture, a choice over and over again, even when, especially when, nothing makes sense. And that choice isn't about ignoring reality. It's about meeting it with strength, with perspective, with the refusal to be rattled by things you cannot control. When Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters," he wasn't offering a platitude. He was pointing to the core of human freedom, the ability to maintain your center, even as the world loses its own. Peace, then, is not a passive state. It's an act of courage. It's the refusal to be dragged into every emotional current. It's the decision to pause, breathe, and respond from principle, not panic. And it's in those moments, when everything around you is disordered, that this kind of peace shines brightest. Because it's easy to feel balanced when life is smooth. But when the pressure rises, the deadlines close in, the people disappoint, the plans unravel, that's when peace becomes real. Not just a feeling, but a foundation. Not just an idea, but a stance. The Stoic understands that you can't control how others speak, how fast the world moves, or what breaks next. But you can control your tone, your posture, your breath, your mindset. And when you hold that space, that silent, deliberate, inner clarity, you're no longer at the mercy of disorder. You're guiding yourself through it. That's not detachment from life. That's full engagement, without chaos owning you. Peace, in this sense, is not neutral. It's power under control. It's self-respect in motion. It's the quiet confidence that says, I may not have all the answers, but I'm not going to lose myself looking for them. And that kind of presence, unshaken, unwavering, becomes a magnet. It calms others. It clarifies choices. It opens doors that emotional urgency would slam shut. But peace doesn't come naturally. It must be chosen, sometimes 100 times in one day. Every time you're tempted to snap back, you pause. Every time you feel the spiral, you breathe. Every time your ego demands revenge, you remember your values. This is the work. This is the path. This is the Stoic way, not to avoid the fire, but to walk through it without being burned inside. So ask yourself, today, right now, what are you letting disturb your peace? And more importantly, who has the authority to take it from you? If the answer is anyone or anything other than yourself, then maybe it's time to take it back. Not with force, but with presence, with awareness, with the daily decision to return to center, no matter how loud the world becomes, because the storm will pass. But how you stood in it, that will stay with you forever. You don't need a quiet world to build a quiet mind. You need presence, discipline, and the willingness to return to your center again and again, no matter how loud life gets. Chaos doesn't define you. Your response to it does. And that response is built not in the moment of crisis, but in the moments you train for it. When you choose stillness over reaction. When you detach instead of control. When you listen more than you speak. Every choice you make, even the small ones, either strengthens your foundation or shakes it. Stoicism doesn't promise comfort. It doesn't guarantee success, but it offers something far more powerful, inner peace that can't be stolen. A mindset that doesn't collapse with the world, but grows stronger inside it. And if you want that kind of peace, that clarity, that quiet power, then make it a daily practice, not a wish, not a theory, a practice. Train your breath to be calm when your chest tightens. Train your eyes to see clearly when your mind fogs. Train your thoughts to return to what's in your control, and let everything else pass like weather. You're not here to escape the storm. You're here to become the kind of person who can walk through it and not be moved. We spend most of our lives trying to avoid pain. We numb it, deny it, distract ourselves from it, hoping it will disappear if we just move fast enough. But pain doesn't vanish when ignored. It deepens, it waits, and eventually, it teaches. You see, pain isn't your enemy, it's your mirror. It shows you where the wound is, where you've outgrown a version of yourself, where you've been living out of alignment. Pain is not there to punish you. It's there to wake you up. The Stoics didn't ask, "How do I avoid suffering?" They asked, "What can this teach me?" Because growth isn't found in comfort. It's found in discomfort understood, in wounds reflected on, not just endured. If you're willing to sit with pain instead of run from it, you unlock a source of power deeper than any book, any advice, any moment of ease. In this episode, we'll explore how pain, when met with awareness and courage, becomes the most honest guide you'll ever have. You don't need to fear it, you need to listen to it. Let's begin. 1. Pain points to what matters. Pain is not random. It doesn't show up uninvited. It arrives with meaning, with precision, and most of all, with direction. It highlights what matters to us, even if we're not ready to admit it. Physical pain reminds us how much we value our bodies when we've ignored their needs. Emotional pain reveals attachments, fears, wounds we thought we'd buried. It points, not aimlessly, but straight toward the core of our values, and often our neglect of them. The Stoics never saw pain as a mistake. They saw it as a messenger. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it." But judgment isn't always a flaw. Sometimes it's a signal that something here matters enough to shake you. You don't grieve what you don't care about. You don't feel betrayed unless trust meant something. You don't feel fear unless there's something you long to protect. So, instead of recoiling from pain, try tracing it. Ask, what is this pointing to? What value in me is being touched, tested, threatened? When you dig into that question, pain becomes a flashlight. It shows you the parts of your life that are calling for attention, not as punishment, but as a path. Most people suppress that signal. They medicate it, they numb it, but a Stoic leans in. He doesn't beg for pain, but he doesn't run from its wisdom either. He listens. Think about the last time something really hurt, not just physically, but inside. A rejection, a loss, a disappointment. Why did it sting so deeply? Was it your pride, your love, your hope? In that pain lies the map to your deepest values. And if you're willing to read it, to reflect instead of react, you'll find clarity. You'll see what really matters to you and what doesn't. The problem isn't pain. The problem is pretending it doesn't mean anything. But when you pause, when you investigate it with honesty, pain becomes a compass. It tells you, this is where the work is. This is where your growth lives. This is where your heart still cares. There's something powerful about this shift, because once you see pain as a guide, not a curse, you stop fearing it. You start using it, and it changes your posture. You go from, why is this happening to me, to, what is this revealing about me? That question, that shift, is the doorway to transformation. Because nothing awakens you faster than pain that touches something real. And that's the paradox. The things we try hardest to avoid often hold the exact answers we've been seeking. Pain cuts through the noise. It forces clarity. It simplifies. It burns away the surface and shows you what you can't afford to ignore anymore. That's not cruelty. That's insight. So today, whatever ache you're carrying, don't just wish it away. Listen to it. Let it teach you what matters most. And remember, the pain you feel might just be your soul asking for your full attention. 2. Avoidance multiplies suffering. Pain itself is hard, but avoiding it makes it unbearable. Because when you push discomfort aside, it doesn't disappear. It grows roots. It hides in your habits. It shows up in your mood, your decisions, your body. You think you've escaped it, but all you've done is postpone the lesson. And what could have been a sharp, honest moment of growth becomes a lingering, quiet destruction. The Stoics were clear. Reality must be faced, not fantasized away. Epictetus warned that we suffer not from the events themselves, but from our resistance to them. And resistance often disguises itself as strength. We say, "I'm fine," when we're not. We bury grief under work. We scroll instead of sit with sadness. But suppression is not healing. It's just silent suffering. Avoidance is a delay tactic that costs you more than time. It costs you clarity, because what you avoid, you misunderstand. And what you misunderstand, you fear. But what you face, you begin to understand. And that understanding gives you freedom. That's why the pain you resist the most is often the very place where your breakthrough is hiding. You just have to be still long enough to hear what it's saying. There's a story that captures this idea well. A man walks into his kitchen and sees a leak under the sink. It's small, a slow drip. He tells himself it's not urgent, that he'll fix it later. Days pass. The drip becomes a stream. The cabinet warps. Mold spreads. By the time he acts, the damage is 10 times worse. That's what avoidance does. Pain isn't the leak, it's the warning. But we pretend it's nothing until it becomes everything. Emotional pain works the same way. You avoid the conversation, and now there's resentment. You avoid the truth, and now there's self-betrayal. You avoid the mirror, and now you don't recognize who you've become. And it all started because discomfort felt inconvenient. But here's the thing, growth isn't convenient. It's courageous. To be stoic is not to suppress. It's to confront with clarity, not to dramatize, but to deal. And you deal by turning toward, not away. That doesn't mean you need to fix everything at once. It means you stop pretending it's not there. Because the first act of wisdom is to acknowledge what is. So the next time something hurts, notice your impulse. Do you reach for distraction? Do you rationalize it away? Or can you pause, breathe, and ask, what am I really running from? That moment, that tiny act of facing instead of fleeing, changes everything. Because when you sit with your pain instead of sprinting past it, something unexpected happens. It softens. It starts to speak instead of scream. It begins to make sense. And slowly, the energy you once spent running becomes the energy you now use for healing. Avoidance may seem like comfort in the moment, but it comes at the cost of peace later. And the Stoic understands it is better to face one sharp truth now than to endure 1,000 shallow wounds later. So don't run, sit with it. Look it in the eye. The suffering doesn't grow when you face it, it shrinks. What grows is you. 3. Growth is pain, processed wisely. Pain by itself doesn't guarantee growth. People suffer all the time without changing. They carry old wounds like armor, confuse trauma with identity, and repeat the same emotional injuries. Not because they haven't hurt, but because they haven't learned. Pain is only the raw material. It's what you do with it that makes it transformative. Growth doesn't come from feeling pain. It comes from engaging with it consciously, from processing it, reflecting on it, and translating it into new insight. That's why two people can experience the same heartbreak, and one becomes bitter, while the other becomes wise. The difference isn't the pain, it's the interpretation. Seneca once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. But labor alone doesn't build strength. It's the form, the technique, the recovery that matters." In the same way, pain doesn't refine you unless you meet it with awareness, unless you step back and ask, what is this showing me about myself? What old beliefs are being tested here? What new values are trying to emerge? Pain processed wisely becomes fuel. It sharpens discernment. It breaks down illusions. It forces you to prioritize what truly matters. You realize how little control you have over the world and how much power you have over your perspective. And in that shift, the wound stops being something that happened to you and starts becoming something that's growing through you. We often think growth looks like confidence and clarity, but it doesn't, not at first. It looks like confusion, like sitting alone in silence, like losing pieces of yourself that no longer fit who you're becoming. Growth is messy, and pain is usually the sign that you're on the edge of change. If you numb that pain, you miss the transformation. That's why the Stoic doesn't rush out of discomfort. He stays with it, not to suffer, but to extract wisdom. He turns pain into questions, not complaints, into purpose, not resentment. He understands that suffering without reflection leads to bitterness, but suffering with awareness leads to depth. Think about the person you were 5 years ago. What pain shaped you the most? Was it failure, rejection, loss? Now ask yourself, what did that pain teach you? What part of you did it break? And what part did it rebuild? If you can answer that, then you've already proven the point. Pain can become progress, but only if you process it with intention. This is the essence of Stoic resilience, not emotional numbness, not cold detachment, but the power to turn adversity into alignment, to turn setbacks into structure, to turn wounds into wisdom. Growth demands honesty. It asks you to confront yourself, to revise your story, to outgrow your excuses. Pain is simply the pressure that forces that evolution to begin, and if you lean into it with clarity, with humility, you emerge on the other side more awake, more whole, and more capable of living on purpose. So the next time life hurts, pause before you distract yourself. Breathe before you react. And ask yourself, how can this moment shape me if I let it? Because when you process pain wisely, it doesn't just leave a scar, it leaves a lesson. 4. Learn from discomfort. Don't escape it. Most people live their lives as a race against discomfort. The moment something feels uneasy, a silence in conversation, a pause in achievement, a slight tension in the body or the heart, they rush to fix it, fill it, or flee from it. But the Stoic sees discomfort not as an enemy to escape, but as a teacher to engage. Because within every uncomfortable moment lies an insight, if only you're willing to listen. Discomfort is the space where truth begins to surface. It exposes what you've ignored, avoided, or outgrown. It holds up a mirror, not to punish you, but to reveal where your attention is needed most. And yet, we've been conditioned to treat it like a flaw. We distract ourselves with noise, with dopamine, with justification. But all of that is just a delay. The discomfort will return, often louder, until it's finally heard. Take a moment and think about the last time you felt a deep unease. Maybe it was in a conversation where you couldn't speak your truth. Maybe it was a quiet afternoon that made you feel restless. Maybe it was that sinking feeling in your chest when you realize you're not where you want to be. That discomfort wasn't a mistake. It was data, a signal, a push toward alignment. Stoicism teaches us to sit with that feeling instead of silencing it, to pause and ask, why is this uncomfortable? What is this moment trying to tell me? What does this friction reveal about my values, my direction, my habits? This is not easy. It takes courage to be still in the presence of tension. But this pause, this willingness to reflect, is where strength is built. Just like physical training, discomfort in life is where growth begins. Muscles don't grow without resistance, and neither does character. If you avoid the burn, you avoid the strength. The Stoic knows this. That's why he doesn't chase comfort. He chases clarity, and clarity only comes through engaging with what feels uneasy. Avoiding discomfort is like refusing to look at the warning light on your dashboard. Sure, it's more convenient in the moment, but eventually the damage multiplies. You can't ignore what your soul keeps trying to tell you. You can only delay the inevitable and increase the cost of not listening. This doesn't mean you should wallow in pain or seek suffering. It means you learn to see discomfort as a signal, not a sentence. A moment of discomfort doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It often means something is trying to wake you up. Maybe your boundaries need revisiting. Maybe your environment is draining you. Maybe your goals have shifted, but your habits haven't caught up. The discomfort isn't random, it's a message. So what do? You slow down. You breathe into it, you name it, and most importantly, you ask what it's teaching you, because discomfort, when faced with honesty, becomes one of the most reliable teachers of all. You don't need to escape discomfort, you need to extract its wisdom, because the person who avoids discomfort stays the same, but the person who learns from it, slowly, bravely, becomes someone new, someone stronger, someone more aligned with the truth of who they are. The Stoic doesn't fear discomfort. He studies it. He lets it carve him, shape him, refine him, and through that process, he becomes unshakable, not because life stopped being hard, but because he stopped running from what it was trying to teach. 5. Pain humbles and awakens. There's something about pain that strips away illusions. When life hurts, all the noise fades. The ego, the image, the stories we tell ourselves, they all fall silent. Pain is raw. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It arrives like a storm, and it demands your full attention. But within that storm, something powerful begins to emerge. Clarity. The first thing pain does is humble you. It shows you what you don't control. It reminds you that no matter how much you've achieved, how admired you are, or how comfortable your life seems, you are still human, vulnerable, mortal. And that's not a weakness. That's your starting point for wisdom. When you've felt real pain, it softens your judgments. You stop assuming you understand people just by looking at them. You stop mocking someone else's struggle because you've tasted struggle yourself. You become quieter, not out of fear, but out of respect for how hard life can hit. And that humility, it's not defeat, it's growth. There's a moment in every person's life when they realize, I'm not invincible. And if you allow it, that moment becomes a gift, because from that humility comes awareness. You start asking better questions. What really matters to me? Who am I without the achievements, without the praise, without the things I use to numb the ache? This is where awakening begins, not in some perfect, peaceful moment, but in the chaos, the breakdown, the betrayal, the diagnosis, the loss. Pain opens your eyes to what you've ignored. It wakes up the parts of you that have been on autopilot. It shows you what you've been tolerating that you no longer should. It makes you reevaluate your priorities, your relationships, your direction. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but awakening always is. Think about it. No one grows when they're numb. No one changes when everything feels good. Change begins with friction, and pain is the greatest friction there is. It pushes you to see with new eyes, to feel deeper, to shed what no longer fits the person you're becoming. The Stoics knew this deeply. That pain wasn't a detour, it was a catalyst. Epictetus, who spent his early life as a slave and later became one of the most respected Stoic teachers, didn't shy away from suffering. He said, "Difficulties are things that show a person who they are, because you can fake strength in comfort. But in pain, your real character appears." And here's the paradox. Pain makes you more awake to life. You start noticing beauty in simple things. A quiet morning, a friend who listens, the feeling of being able to laugh again after sorrow. The humble person doesn't take those for granted. They see them for the miracles they are. Pain brings presence. It forces you into the now, because the past is no longer safe and the future feels uncertain. All you have is this breath, and when you accept that, something powerful happens. You become more real, more grounded, more alive. So if you're hurting right now, don't just ask how to make the pain stop. Ask what it's awakening in you. Maybe it's calling you to forgive. Maybe it's nudging you to walk away from something that's draining you. Maybe it's showing you that you've been asleep at the wheel of your own life. That's not failure. That's an invitation. Pain humbles, pain awakens. And if you let it, it will lead you back to yourself, not the version you pretend to be, but the version that's honest, resilient, and deeply aware. 6. Let wounds become wisdom. We all carry wounds. Some are visible, most are not. And yet, what defines us isn't the pain we've experienced. It's what we do with it. Some people spend their lives hiding their wounds, denying them, or letting them fester into bitterness. But the Stoic walks a different path. He doesn't pretend the pain didn't happen. He transforms it. He allows the wound to become wisdom. Wounds are not signs of weakness. They are records of survival. Each one is a moment in your story where life knocked you down and you got back up. But survival isn't the end goal. Growth is. And that means choosing to learn from what hurt you instead of being defined by it. The world teaches us to hide our scars, to cover them up with strength, success, silence. But there's power in revealing them, not to seek sympathy, but to honor the lessons they taught. Because the most valuable wisdom doesn't come from books or theories. It comes from lived experience, from enduring what others might never see, and still choosing to show up with clarity and courage. When something breaks you, you're left with two choices. Let the pain harden you, or let it deepen you. The first leads to walls. The second leads to wisdom. You don't forget what happened, but you no longer let it define your limits. You extract the lesson, not the identity. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." And he was right. The wound isn't what weakens you, it's what forces you to confront what's true, to strip away illusion, to develop patience, to build empathy. And those qualities, they can't be faked. They must be earned, through experience, through adversity, through pain honestly processed. But here's the hard truth. Wounds don't become wisdom automatically. Time doesn't heal. Reflection does. You have to sit with what happened, feel what you tried to suppress. Ask the deeper questions. What did this teach me about trust, about boundaries, about who I am and what I value? If you skip this step, the wound becomes baggage. But if you face it, it becomes a compass. Think of the wisest people you know, the ones who speak gently but with conviction, the ones who listen more than they lecture. They weren't born that way. They became that way by allowing their pain to shape them without destroying them, by letting their history inform them, not imprison them. And this isn't about glorifying suffering. It's about refusing to let suffering be wasted. Pain is already a cost. Make sure it pays you back in wisdom. That failed relationship, let it teach you what love requires. That betrayal, let it sharpen your discernment. That loss, let it reveal what truly matters. Every scar has a voice, but you decide what story it tells. Letting wounds become wisdom doesn't mean you're done hurting. It means the hurt has a purpose now. It's no longer random chaos. It's part of your map. And maybe one day your story helps someone else navigate theirs. Not because you saved them, but because your journey reminded them that healing is possible, that pain can be transformed, that wisdom can grow from even the darkest soil. So don't hide your wounds. Don't rush past them. Let them teach you. Let them soften you. Let them carve something beautiful into your character. Because the Stoic doesn't just survive pain, he refines it. And through that refinement, he becomes something stronger than unscarred strength. He becomes wise. 7. Reflection transforms struggle. Struggle by itself doesn't build you. It wears you down. It drains, distracts, even distorts your sense of what matters. What transforms struggle into growth is not the pain itself, but the pause to reflect, to ask, what is this really about? What is this showing me about myself? Without that pause, struggle is just repetition, but with reflection, it becomes revelation. We live in a world obsessed with speed. Keep moving, keep grinding, don't stop. But when you don't stop, you miss the lesson. You become a machine of reaction rather than a mind of intention. The Stoics understood this deeply. Struggle is not the enemy. Unexamined struggle is. Life will throw hardships at you, no matter how prepared or disciplined you are. But what determines your direction is whether you choose to reflect or just repeat. Take a moment and think about your last serious struggle, something that knocked you down. Maybe it broke your trust. Maybe it tested your patience, your identity, your sense of control. In the moment, it felt chaotic. But looking back, if you really sit with it, what did it reveal? Did it show you a blind spot? A toxic pattern? A part of you that was still fragile, still afraid? That's the gift of reflection. It gives your pain a name. And once pain has a name, it has less power. Marcus Aurelius wrote privately in his meditations, not for applause, but for clarity. His journals were a form of reflection, asking himself hard questions, confronting his own impulses, reminding himself of what he stood for. That's the practice. You don't wait for life to make sense. You make time for it to teach you. You open the wound not to suffer again, but to understand what caused it in the first place. Reflection is the turning point. It's what stops you from becoming bitter or vengeful or hopeless. Because when you reflect, you shift from victim to observer, from "why is this happening to me?" to "what can I learn from this?" That shift is the difference between staying stuck in your pain and rising from it with new clarity. This doesn't mean you have to romanticize suffering. You don't have to pretend you're grateful for betrayal, for loss, for injustice. But you do have a choice in what you build from it. Reflection doesn't erase the pain. It gives it meaning. And meaning is what the human spirit needs more than comfort. Comfort may soothe, but it doesn't change you. Meaning does. And here's the truth. Without reflection, struggle often becomes identity. People begin to believe they are their pain. They speak from their wounds instead of their wisdom. They keep attracting the same chaos because they never step back to understand the lesson it came to deliver. But when you reflect, the struggle becomes a stepping stone, not a sentence. You outgrow the old you, not just emotionally, but philosophically. That's why the Stoic trains his mind to slow down, especially in pain. He doesn't react blindly. He observes, he writes, he questions, he meditates, he lets silence speak, because answers rarely come when you're screaming. They come when you're listening. And pain, ironically, makes you quiet enough to hear the truth. So if you're struggling right now, don't rush out of it. Don't numb it. Don't distract yourself with noise or blame. Sit with it. Not forever, but long enough to understand what it's revealing, what it's reshaping, what it's asking you to see differently. Because once you reflect, once you really digest what the pain is trying to show you, you become less afraid of struggle. You begin to trust it, not because it's easy, but because it's honest. Because every time you reflect, you refine your direction. And that's how struggle becomes not just something you survived, but something that shaped the best of who you are. 8. Pain clears illusion. Pain doesn't just hurt, it strips away what's false. The masks we wear, the stories we cling to, the lies we tell ourselves to feel safe. All of it begins to crumble when pain enters the picture. And that's why it's such a powerful teacher. Not because it's kind, but because it's honest. Pain doesn't flatter, it reveals. Most people go through life with illusions built around comfort. We believe certain people will never betray us, that success means security, that we're in control. But all it takes is one moment, a sudden loss, a sharp betrayal, a health scare, a failed dream, and suddenly the illusion shatters. We realize how fragile life is, how little is truly guaranteed, and in that moment, pain becomes clarity. The Stoics didn't see this as a punishment, they saw it as a wake-up call. Epictetus said, "It is difficulties that show what men are." Pain doesn't just test character, it reveals truth. When everything feels like it's falling apart, what remains? That answer is your foundation. That's who you really are. There's a reason why some of the wisest people you'll meet are also the ones who've suffered the most. They're not wise because they escaped pain. They're wise because they faced it. They didn't turn away when life exposed the gaps in their thinking or the flaws in their expectations. They paid attention. They asked, "What illusion just got destroyed here?" And they rebuilt from truth, not fantasy. When you're in pain, your ego is forced to sit down. Suddenly the things you thought mattered, status, appearance, validation, feel meaningless. You start to see clearly who really shows up for you, what truly gives your life meaning, where your values lie. Pain doesn't just teach you about the world, it teaches you about yourself. And often, what it shows you is uncomfortable. But that's the point. Comfort keeps you asleep. Pain wakes you up. Sometimes the illusion isn't just external, it's internal. Maybe you thought you were stronger than you were, or you told yourself you'd already healed when you hadn't, or you pretended to be someone you're not, just to be accepted. Pain burns through those layers. It demands you be real. Not for the world, but for yourself. This is why Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios, not to dwell in fear, but to break the illusion that life owes us comfort. They trained themselves to face pain mentally before it arrived physically. And when it did, they greeted it with clarity, not confusion, because they had already peeled back the illusion of permanence and control. So the next time pain enters your life, ask yourself, what truth is it trying to show me? What have I been avoiding? Where have I been living in illusion? About myself, about others, about what matters. Pain clears illusion, but only if you allow it to. You can resist it, numb it, blame others, or you can let it sharpen your sight. You can let it reveal the gaps, the blind spots, the false hopes. You can rebuild from what's real, because once the illusion is gone, you stop wasting energy on what doesn't serve you. You stop chasing shadows. You start living aligned with what actually matters. That kind of life, one built on clarity, not fantasy, is unshakable. It may not always be easy, but it's real, and that is the beginning of true inner peace. 9. Ask, what is this pain teaching me? Most people ask the wrong question when pain hits. They ask, why me? And while that question is human, it rarely leads to growth. It leads to blame, to resentment, to feeling like a victim of life's cruelty. The better question, the one the Stoics would ask, is, what is this pain teaching me? Because pain always carries a lesson, but it only speaks to those willing to listen. Think about it. Every time you've grown, every time you've evolved, matured, or deepened your self-awareness, was it during ease, or was it during adversity? Comfort can make you complacent, but pain gets your attention. It disrupts your pattern. It forces you to look inward, to reevaluate, to reframe, to rebuild. But only if you're brave enough to ask the right question. Let's be honest, pain doesn't come with neat explanations. It's messy, it's emotional, it can shake your identity, but inside that chaos is a signal, a signpost pointing toward something you may have neglected. Maybe it's a boundary you keep violating, a relationship you've been avoiding, a truth you've refused to face. Pain is rarely random, it's precise. The question is, are you willing to decode it? The Stoics didn't see pain as something to run from, they saw it as information. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if it's endurable, then endure it. If it's not, stop complaining. But buried in that is something deeper. If you can endure it, learn from it. Don't just survive it. Let it shape you. Let it instruct you. Let it redirect your life. When you ask, what is this pain teaching me? You stop resisting reality and start engaging with it. And that shift, from resistance to reflection, is the birthplace of wisdom. You begin to see patterns. You notice how certain situations always trigger the same emotional reaction. You see how your expectations set you up for disappointment. You begin to grow, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. Here's a truth we often avoid. Life doesn't owe us easy lessons. The deepest lessons are rarely delivered in comfort. They arrive wrapped in discomfort, uncertainty, and sometimes heartbreak. But that doesn't make them less valuable. In fact, it's what makes them unforgettable. And that's why asking the right question matters so much. It reframes the experience. It transforms suffering into schooling. Imagine carrying pain with you for years, grief, regret, shame, never stopping to ask what it was trying to teach you. That's a tragedy, because within every hardship is the seed of transformation, but reflection is the water. It activates the lesson. Without it, pain just sits there, heavy, unprocessed, and unresolved. So the next time life hits you, not gently but like a storm, pause. Don't ask, why did this happen to me? Ask, what does this moment require from me? What belief is being challenged? What version of me is being called to evolve? Because that question doesn't make the pain vanish, but it gives it purpose. And purpose turns chaos into clarity. When you train yourself to ask better questions in pain, You train your mind to seek growth rather than escape. You stop fearing discomfort. You start trusting the process. And slowly, you become the kind of person who can face adversity not with panic, but with poise, because you know that every pain comes bearing a gift, the opportunity to become more awake, more resilient, more whole. 10. Transmute pain into power. There's a moment, subtle but life-altering, when you stop seeing pain as a burden and start using it as fuel. It's the moment you no longer ask life to be easy, but instead ask yourself to be stronger. That's what transmutation is. Not ignoring pain, not suppressing it, but transforming it into something useful, something noble, into power. Pain on its own doesn't empower. It breaks, it wounds, it exhausts. But pain processed, pain examined, understood, integrated, becomes the foundation for a deeper kind of strength. The Stoics understood this well. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." He didn't say, "Avoid the pain." He said, "Lift it." You don't grow stronger by denying what hurts. You grow stronger by facing it directly and asking, "How can I use this?" When someone betrays you, can you use that experience to deepen your discernment without turning bitter? When life falls apart, can you use the rubble to build a better structure inside yourself? When you fail, can you extract wisdom instead of shame? Transmuting pain is alchemy of the soul. It requires courage, not the loud kind, but the quiet, disciplined kind, the kind that doesn't dramatize suffering, but turns it into discipline, the kind that doesn't seek revenge, but reinvests energy into growth, the kind that doesn't collapse, but channels pain into purpose. The most resilient people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who avoided hardship. They're the ones who used it. They made their trauma a teacher. They made rejection their redirection. They made their lowest moments into turning points. Not because they were superhuman, but because they chose to transmute instead of retreat. This mindset doesn't mean you pretend everything is fine. It means you give your pain a job. If you've been through loss, use it to develop empathy for others. If you've battled fear, use it to develop courage. If you've failed, use it to teach others how to rise. Don't waste your pain. Recycle it. Refine it. Let it sharpen you. We often talk about healing like it's some gentle, passive thing, but healing can be fierce. It's the process of taking your worst moments and saying, "This will not break me. It will build me." That's not denial. That's declaration. It's not toxic positivity. It's philosophical maturity, the kind that understands pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, and transformation is a choice. So how do you transmute pain into power? You sit with it, you listen to it, you learn from it, and then you act. You realign your life, you build new standards, you use your experience to strengthen your boundaries, your values, your mission. And with time, you become a walking example of what it means to be forged in fire, not consumed by it. You start to radiate calm under pressure. You develop depth. You move through life with presence, not panic. And people around you can feel it, the steadiness, the quiet strength. That's what happens when pain is no longer your prison, but your forge. So if you're hurting right now, good. You're standing in the doorway of power. Don't run. Don't numb. Don't collapse. Breathe. Reflect. Building. Because on the other side of that pain isn't just relief. It's transformation. Not just survival, but sovereignty. Pain will visit you, not once, but many times throughout your life. It may arrive as loss, as failure, as rejection, or silence, but in each form, it carries a message, a challenge, an invitation. This episode wasn't about romanticizing suffering or glorifying hardship. It was about shifting your relationship with it, about realizing that pain is not just something to survive, it's something to use. It's a force, neutral at first, that becomes either poison or power, depending on what you do with it. The Stoic doesn't ask the world to be kinder. He asks himself to be stronger, not harder, not colder, but wiser, deeper, and more rooted. He knows that life doesn't protect anyone from pain. What sets him apart is how he responds. He doesn't flinch at discomfort. He listens to it, learns from it, uses it. When pain arises, let it show you what matters. Let it strip away the illusions, the noise, the distractions. Let it reveal to you what you truly value, what needs to change, and who you're becoming. Then take that insight and act. Building focus. Grow. Every scar you carry is not a sign of weakness, it's a map, proof that you've endured, evolved, and continued. But the real transformation happens when you stop hiding your pain and start integrating it. When you let it refine you. When you stop chasing comfort and start cultivating meaning. So don't just endure life's pain. Master it, shape it, transmute it. And if this episode helped you see your pain differently, share it. Leave a comment, send it to someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more Stoic clarity every week. Because you never know, the words you share today might be the light someone else needs to find their strength in the dark. Until next time, keep walking your path with stillness, with awareness, with fire in your chest, and wisdom in your stride.